Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Moses and you are listening to the AHP Leader Podcast. And this podcast is a one-off series special to celebrate AHP Day 2020. We're holding 4 podcasts all together, and this podcast is to celebrate inspirational AHP role models from the LGBTQIA+ community. So I am delighted to be joined by an utterly fabulous panel who have either nominated themselves or been nominated, and in some cases nominated by many people, to join us today. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. So Jade, I'm going to come to you first.
Hi everyone, my name's Jade. I'm a therapy technician working at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. I'm gay and my pronouns are she and her.
Thank you, Jade. Charli.
I'm Charli Robertson. I'm a physiotherapist. I spent most of my career working in performance sport, but I'm currently doing a PhD full-time at University of Bath. I'm a gay woman and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Charli. Nick, coming down to you next.
Hello, I'm a community physiotherapist. Recently just got a new role there. I'm based in South Tyneside. I'm a gay man and my pronouns are he, him.
Thank you, Nick. Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline Bovey. I'm a public health dietitian based in South Wales. I'm currently chair of the British Dietetic Association and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. Sean.
Hello, my name's Sean Pert, he, him. I'm a speech and language therapist and I work at the University of Manchester on the speech and language therapy degree programme and setting up a trans health service in Greater Manchester with the LGBT Foundation.
Thank you. Holly, coming down to you.
Hi, my name's Holly. I'm a ventilation physio from Coventry, sexual orientation, lesbian, pronouns she, her.
Thank you, Holly. Steph.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Steph. I'm a specialist paramedic with the ambulance service and I'm also trans experience lead for the National Ambulance LGBT network.
Thanks, Steph. And as was said, loving your uniform there. Absolutely fantastic. You've literally just hot off the press from work. So thank you so much for joining us. And Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Jepson. I'm a team coordinator for the Kent Community Health Foundation Trust down in East Sussex for community paediatric service. I'm pansexual and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Amy. So I'm just going to dive right in here and ask about role models. So we all kind of know why role models are important in not just our profession, but our lives, but why are role models important to us? So what makes role models important within our profession? And I'm going to come to you, Charli, first to kick us off. Thank you.
I think it's the commonly used phrase at the minute of you can't be what you can't see. And for me, that is being the role model that I certainly didn't have growing up. So when I was growing up, it was pretty much the entire period of when Section 28 was around. There's a lot of people that I work with who are from the same era as that, and so it sort of follows you through into your work life. And so just almost actively going against that natural automatic bit of shame almost, to show others that it's okay to be open and confident and that you can absolutely succeed and have an absolutely fabulous working life, I think is really important, and I think it is important in our profession as well.
Thank you. Amy, can I come to you next?
Yeah, sure. I think being a role model to a degree for me is a lot just about being visible and about showing, as Charli said, that you can have that mixture of your kind of personal life and social life mixed in with work life and still be a really successful person. And that's why people in different kind of leadership positions as role models is really helpful. People in aspirational positions where you can look up to, seeing someone like you achieving really well in the workplace is important, but also just inspirational role models at every level then teach you other things, not just that you aspire maybe to do really well in your workplace, but actually to be a really good person and to be accepted and welcomed in your workplace. So there's a role model for me, not just about showing kind of good practice and achievement, but also just being, showing a real good character values that you then aspire to be as a person as well.
Yeah, I think you've just hit the nail on the head there in terms of aspiring, and it's not just about inspirational role models, it's aspirational role models. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the panel, Amy, as a pansexual, is because there's not many of us around, and to have that visible role model, but also some of the additional challenges that people face because of stereotypes. And it's the stereotypes, I think, that can oppress people and hold people back. And often it's not the problem with you, it's the problem with other people. And it's getting over that. But because it's the problem with other people, it's almost like you change your behaviours and act differently because you don't want that other person to feel awkward because they don't understand. So role models that are different, that sit outside of this heteronormative, Sean, I was really going to say something there about the pussy that's just jumped on your lap, but I'm not going to. We're setting the narrative already in this podcast. But I think it is so about that, isn't it? Like, I can't be more passionate about that. That's what it's about. And if people don't have those visible role models within a profession, it's how can people aspire to be there or get there. And one of the great things about this panel was we have people who've achieved so much, who are in positions of influence. So that kind of brings us on to the next point about why do we think there's a lack of AHP role models from LGBTQIA+ community? Why do we think that? So Steph, I'm going to come in to you for this, to lead this question.
Yeah, no worries. So thank you for the question. So in regards to why don't we think, sometimes it is the atmosphere that we work in, sometimes it's the pressure that we feel on becoming. We talked about the role models and how the aspirational and everything are, but sometimes people don't feel they want to pick up that gauntlet and run with it. Sometimes it's difficult if you face hostile challenges within the workplace, or sometimes no matter how hard that you try, you always butt up and you go against oppression and people who will do anything they can to put you down. So that's when that shining beacon comes through. Or sometimes, we must be honest, in society we do live today, sometimes, they are not accepting of AHPs, LGBT plus role models as we speak right now. We see sometimes in the news, and sometimes Twitter has quite a lot of people facing challenges from well-known people, and some people then become very kind of scared to kind of put their head above the parapet in case they get shot down.
And I can see lots of nods, and that certainly strikes a chord with me. And so there's lots of people that wanted to come in on this podcast but weren't out. They hadn't outed themselves at work yet for that exact reason. So do you think that's a big problem, Steph, that people are not confident within healthcare, within our professions, to out themselves?
Absolutely. You probably hit the nail right on the head. Obviously statistics show there's more people who are afraid to come and show their true selves because the way it may affect their career, for the career progression, or how they are perceived amongst their peers, and how they may lose friends or people, and people may come together. We all know, obviously, one of the big issues at work is workplace banter, and all of a sudden when you come out, then obviously you set yourself up for that, and it takes a strong person to kind of go push through that. I think we've all probably got personal stories when at times times it has become tough, and you've only had to kind of push through. And maybe some people see that. Some people who have not yet had the courage to kind of come out, see what happens around them, and actually says to myself, actually, do you know what? I just don't feel at this particular moment that I'm strong enough to kind of deal with that. So, as we said, obviously we're here because we are role models as such. But no, I don't think anybody set out to be a role model. It's just something that people see amongst us. And obviously we've kind of pushed through that, and people see and look up to and say, well, sometimes I wish I had the courage to kind of stand up and do that, but everybody does. It all just takes that kind of that first step. Sometimes that first step is thrown against us, against our will, and we have to react to that. But other times, some people kind of like, do you know what, maybe I'm happy where I am. I don't want to open myself up to what is perceived is the issues out there.
So powerful, Steph, so powerful. And I think it's not just the attitude of peers, it's those above you. And like you said, you don't want to potentially tarnish your career because of the gender of the person you fell in love with, or the gender of the person you choose to be with, because you are defined by that. So it's about, again, the next steps, and constantly thinking about that, where if you fit into that, you know, heteronormative model, you just don't have to think of that and the repercussions of that.
It's comfort, isn't it? In the end of the day, it's comfortable where you are. It's that scary, as I said, it's that scary step to kind of put your head up and say, do you know what? I'm going to be true to me, true to myself. And, you know, I really don't care. Of course we care what people think, but you have to have that attitude. I don't care what I think. You either accept me or you don't.
Absolutely. We'll definitely be coming back to you, Steph. Jade, can I come into you for your comments, please?
Yes, absolutely. I think, as kind of Steph was saying, you know, it's whether or not you feel confident where you are, and whether or not you feel comfortable to be out to your colleagues or obviously in the workplace. And I think that comes down to obviously people's past experiences. So if you're coming from, you know, a different trust or a different, obviously a job altogether. And I think people that haven't had to come out don't understand both the physical and mental exhaustion that it takes to have to constantly come out to, you know, not just once. And I think that also comes down to it, where whether or not both people, you know, if you want to come out in your professional life, and also whether or not people are out personally. And I think that comes down to it as well.
And do you think that's one of the reasons why it's important to have role models, because they can almost provide that support or safety net, or someone you can like almost bounce off, confide in? Is that one of the importance of role models as well, Jade?
I think, yeah, having a visible ally, whether it's someone who is also LGBT+, or I think obviously with the use of the rainbow badges, you know, highlights that individual as, okay, this person is a safe person to talk to, and having those visible, whether it's a role model or an ally, definitely helps people in the workplace. And also, you know, with the kind of wider representation, you know, within the healthcare system as well, definitely helps.
Thank you. Now, one thing I want to cover, this is an inspirational role model podcast. This is about letting people know that there are people out there who've achieved amazing things. But I really want to talk about challenges, because it's important for people out there to know that you can still go through challenges and you can turn them into either positives, or they mold you into who you are. So I'm going to come to you, Sean, and just ask you to, and I'm aware this can be often painful or traumatic for people. So, you know, what challenges have you faced? How have you overcome them? And how have they made you into who you are today?
Thanks, Rachel. Well, as a speech and language therapist, most speech therapists work with children at least at some point. And as a newly qualified, I was really interested in working with bilingual children. And I remember very distinctly people saying, I really don't think you should work with children. And then them saying, well, you can't work with bilingual parents, because I was working in the Northwest where there are lots of Asian families, and they were saying, well, you know, Asian women will never talk to you about childbirth and their child's development and let you with their children. And this very kind of horrible homophobia was directed at me as if it was about professionalism, as if it was about, oh, you should really be doing something more, you know, with your kind of with your tribe, really. So I had several nasty managers kind of making derogatory remarks about what I should do. And I was just really fascinated by this area, because I'd seen this on placement. And I went on to become a specialist in that area. And I remember we built up a service, me and a colleague built up a service where children were assessed and treated in home language. So we were dealing with lots of cultural issues as well. And we had several bilingual co-workers who were from the local community. So these were women of various ages who were, some of them very traditional, and we got on really well. And I remember the younger ones kind of twigged on quite early because the things I'd kind of talked about and dropped hints really. And one of the older ladies hadn't really met any gay people before, never mind anybody from a very different background to hers. So she finally kind of said to one of the other women, "Do you think Sean's..." And I remember walking in the room and saying, "Really? It's taken you a year to guess that?" And I think just by kind of taking the heat out of it and going, "I'm fine to talk about this. You talk about your culture and the things that you hold dear to your heart, you know, the way that your religion, your way of life." And I found we got a lot of respect for that people can, you know, even people that are very religious, very traditional backgrounds can see that you're treating them with respect, and they will value you for your skills and and then eventually for your friendship, because I changed their minds. You know, people had told them that LGBT people were, you know, demons, and they were like, "But Sean's lovely and he's really good at his job." And I think there's no better answer than saying, you know, when people say, "Oh, it must be difficult to work with all sorts of people." Nonsense. We are here to work with everybody. I care about all the children with speech and language problems, all my clients. That's why I came into this caring profession. So I think the best answer to homophobia, which, let's face it, is based on unfounded hatred of people, demonization, is by us being people. Because by making us into an image, a negative idea, it's very easy to get people to believe there's something wrong with LGBTQ plus people. But actually, when they're treating your child and they've helped them to speak when they couldn't speak before, or whatever job you're doing, people, that matters to people. So I think the NHS and care generally is people helping people, and people can see that and value that. So it's a fantastic answer to that. So I kind of look back on that and think, you know, I can now tell my students, you can work wherever you like. And why should you? You know, we had a therapist who was a stammerer, and they were saying, "Do you want to work in stammering?" He was saying, "No, I don't want to work in that area at all." And I was saying, well, you know, you don't have to work in any area just because you're, you know, I get my bilingual students being told they should work with bilingual families. Well, why would you when it's everyday life to you? I found it really interesting. I've really benefited from it. So you can tell I'm a speech therapist. I'm not shutting up, am I?
I love it. Thank you. And that's such a terrible experience that is alive and in the NHS. I mean, people that think that homophobia and discrimination does not exist in the NHS, I mean, and it exists in all professions, to then you turn that into something so incredible, and then you're teaching the next generation, they're learning from you, and that's exactly why you're here today. So Holly, coming to you next.
So the main challenge that I found at work is and I've only ever had homophobia at work from other AHPs, particularly AHPs, and a comment that I get quite often is, "You don't look gay." So the assumption is that you aren't gay. And then I always feel, I shouldn't find that offensive, but I do. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to look like? How do you want me to act? And a big thing that I have at the moment is because my wife works in the same hospital and we have quite an unusual surname, you might have noticed. And the assumption is that we're sisters. And then I have to then explain that, no, it's my wife. Or she's explaining, no, it's my wife. And there was a particular colleague that we both come across on several occasions that said, "Oh, that was that really embarrassing moment that we had together in ED, wasn't there, when I thought Louise was your sister?" And then keeps on bringing it up. And then every time I find myself coming out to various different people in various different places at work, and it becomes quite an uncomfortable situation. But I think then there's been junior colleagues that have seen me deal with that and say, actually, no, she's my wife, we're happy, you know, we get on with it, we work together. And then they've come and said to me, well, you know, that's really good that you can do that and you can work together. And, you know, I think that's quite good that you can work with somebody that you're married to quite often. And another thing that I think I struggled with quite a lot recently is a colleague of mine came out as bisexual to me, but not at work, because there was a comment in our office from a very senior member of our team who said that it was, why do you need to wear a rainbow badge? Because you shouldn't have a rainbow badge for your gay day. I don't get a straight day. And I've heard that several times. And I think that when you hear that and you hear it from senior management in your team and you hear it every day, I think, you know, there's that undercurrent of homophobia within the NHS. There's an undercurrent of homophobia generally, I think, in a hospital setting. And I think that then that makes it difficult for people to come out. And I know that Charli will say this, because me and Charli were in university together, and Charli was open and proud as a lesbian at university, whereas I wasn't, and I hid it from everyone until I qualified and until I became more grown up and I accepted it more. And I think physio particularly, I don't know whether people agree with this with physio, but I think physio has a very big problem with homophobia. Not so much with, I don't think, lesbian and gay men, but I think more bisexual, pansexual, transsexual, and there's that acceptance. It's, I don't understand it, so you don't exist mentality, so I'm not going to talk about it because that's not something I have to deal with. And recently, because we've started using pronouns on our signature handle at work, another colleague had said, well, you don't need to do that because you're clearly a woman, but assumed that I identified as a woman and my pronouns were she and her, and then said, because what else would I call you? Would I call you it? And again, this was in an office with ranging members of staff, and I think that, you know, until it's challenged, and we had to challenge that person, it just goes unnoticed, and then that makes people feel uncomfortable, and there's just this continual undercurrent of homophobia that exists in trusts and in the NHS generally.
Yeah, so you've raised several really important points there, and it's about that safety, isn't it? Psychological safety. It's about understanding. It's about that constant being outed on your behalf. Oh, thanks for telling people that, or feeling the need that it's their story to tell. And then it's just the lack of understanding. It's like, you know, every gay woman fancies and every single woman they ever meet in a profession where you have to touch each other and other people. There's that misconception that the touch becomes sexual because you're automatically attracted to people of the same gender. And it's just, it's a cycle continues, isn't it? Now, Sean, I know you wanted to come in, and then I'm going to come to you, Charli, as well. So Sean, do you want to, have you got some comments?
I'm glad, Holly, you mentioned the thing about the rainbow flags, because my office, I kind of go to town really, because I've had enough, because I have so much over the years. I've had so much comments. I have a stock answer now, which is, I'll take my rainbow flags down when you take your pictures of you and your husband down, because I come into your office and I see that you're heterosexual every single day. And you know, the other thing that I've tried with a manager who consistently said, you know, why are you doing this? You know, is it professional to have your office? I love that one. Is it professional? So is it professional to have your office? So, you know, into staff room, saying to her, you know, questions she asked me, I started to ask in front of other people. So I'd say, when did you decide you were heterosexual? You know, do you think it's normal or just common? And just making a real joke of it, because then, you know, if she dare say anything now, people are like, what's Sean going to say back? And I can do that because I'm old and grizzled, and I can kind of fight back because I've heard it all before. But I think I really say to our students, there's a lot of stuff talked about professionalism, and I think being your authentic self so that you're doing the best job is professional, and I think we should be really strong on that.
Thanks, Sean. Charli, coming to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just in terms of an experience that I had when I was on placement. I remembered while Holly was talking, it was a senior mentor while I was on placement, and I was doing some first aid work with some youth female hockey players. And the comment came like, "Are you allowed to work with them?" And I just thought that's utterly ridiculous. She was implying that it was something to do with paedophilia, and it was awful. And I've never had that since, but it really, really hit home to me. And I was like, this isn't okay. And that was in an NHS hospital. I think the word shouldn't be fortunate, but I have been fortunate in my more recent job roles. I think the only other thing that I've experienced is, because I do look like much more of a stereotype than the likes of Holly, I will quite often get mistaken for male, but also once people find out that I'm a gay woman, and because I have short hair as well, it reduces the value of my opinion as a woman. So it's like, it doesn't mean as much, you can't have a say on this in the workplace in relation to that. And it's meant to be workplace banter. But in terms of other people who maybe aren't out and open, and you're trying to be the role model and you're putting yourself out there, but it's damaging. We
definitely need to call the banter out, because it's just not funny.
Yeah,
it's just not funny.
No, it makes such a big difference, because it's like using the word gay as a negative term, whether it's patients or other colleagues, etc. You don't know who's listening to that and can feel absolutely awful in terms of where they're progressing, where they are on that journey. If someone uses it in front of me, I will generally call them out on it, because I'm pretty comfortable now. But there was certainly a time when I knew that I wasn't comfortable enough to put myself out there. So I think it's almost a responsibility to challenge that and make that change with people.
And it's even as simple as, oh, Sean, you know who I mean, Sean, the gay one. It's even to those microaggressions to that I don't think people truly realize. And do a call out. I think we need to. It's the banter, it's the defining people, and it's
asking just which one's the guy in the relationship.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If that comes up and you're speaking to colleagues and they're like, which one's the guy in the relationship? That's kind of the point. There isn't one. It's just, it's the microaggressions that really get you. And there's even some friends to this day who do it and don't have no intention of causing any harm, but it perpetuates a problem in the wider scope of people.
Thank you. Jade, I'm coming to you, then Caroline, then Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my kind of worst experiences at a previous NHS trust was when my partner very kindly got me a rainbow lanyard, and sort of thought, because she knew that I loved kind of being open about it, and I thought innocently wore it at work. And then one of my senior managers decided to take it upon themselves to kind of single me out, sit me down and say how I couldn't wear a rainbow lanyard at work. And I was kind of explaining, well, everyone else is wearing their own personalised lanyards. There was people with football lanyards, Harry Potter lanyards. Why couldn't I wear a symbol to say, I'm a safe person to talk to? And the fact that they said, well, it's a political statement. And I just couldn't believe that in this day and age that it was being called a political statement, as if my human life is political. And kind of rather than, although at the time obviously made me kind of very upset and was very kind of like, well, didn't know where to kind of turn to, didn't really have any support from members in my team, had to kind of seek outside support from my other allied health professional, and we managed to find that there was in fact a equality kind of group as such that wasn't very widely advertised, unfortunately, and then it kind of spurred me on from there, because I, more than anything, I wanted to prove a point, to kind of get one up on being like, it's not a political symbol, it's It's a symbol to show that, you know, there are LGBT plus people, and, you know, people that wear, whether it's a rainbow lanyard or obviously the rainbow badges, that person is a safe person, and we shouldn't be thinking of, these aren't political statements, these are people's lives. And, you know, we know that LGBT plus people, you know, face some of the worst health inequalities in the UK and obviously across the globe, and we need to be addressing that. And this is one way of demonstrating that places of, you know, whether it's the NHS or other organisations, that it's an inclusive place, not only to, you know, be looked after as a patient, but also as a member of staff, to, you know, that you can actively see this is hopefully a open and inclusive workplace.
Yeah, and it's the meaning behind the flag or the rainbow badge or the rainbow light. It's the meaning behind it. And I think that's why when the AHP badge came out and it had, you know, what essentially was the pride flag in the middle of it, through just a mistake, and it was rectified. And I think that is a really important part and point that you've just raised, Jade. Caroline, coming down to you.
Thank you. I think I want to sort of count myself lucky amongst some of the tales that we've heard here this evening, in that I haven't really experienced any personal affronts that I'm aware of in work. You know, you never know what's going on behind your back, and I think certainly some of the cases that we've dealt with in our advisory group within the health board that I work in, it's really clear that homophobia is absolutely rife within the NHS and certainly within our organisation, in terms of the way that possibly a small number of people have been treated, but treated very badly. And it has taken a huge amount of effort to get the right support for individuals at the right time to make sure that they were able to remain in work. And when we live in the 21st century and we talk about the NHS being a caring organisation, we really don't look after our employees as well as we should be doing in many, many instances. You know, as I say, I'm obviously, you know, sort of talking from the same platform that Charli talks about here, in terms of people make an assumption when they look at us anyway in terms of our sexuality. And I didn't complete my training until I was in my mid-40s, so I'd been self-employed and sort of living in a small West Wales town and having a pretty tough time of it there, including sort of physical assault and all sorts of violence and things in terms of my sexuality. And it was such a relief to move to Cardiff and to be part of this kind of inclusive community, which is a very culturally diverse community in Cardiff, and felt safe suddenly for the first time in my life. And, you know, it hasn't been without incident, but certainly I felt safe, and that was transformative. So as soon as I qualified, I made the decision that I was not going to hide my sexuality at all. I hadn't been particularly out in West Wales, but again, people made assumptions and we were targeted because of that. Went into the workplace, was out from day one, and suddenly found myself in this kind of role model position, which is something that feels so alien to me, even sort of 17 years later, I think it is. You know, it is something that it doesn't sit comfortably on my shoulders, but I understand implicitly, I think, the reasons why it's important for me to keep going, even though these things are so far outside of my comfort zone. But it would seem to me that I do a lot of things that are outside my comfort zone, so why would this be any different? And I think one of the things that struck me in recent weeks, months probably, has been that adoption of the flag. So COVID took over our rainbow flag, and I know there are lots of people out there who feel slightly aggrieved about this, not in any malicious way, but it has been adopted very, very easily as a COVID symbol, whereas I know the NHS in England, it took ages and ages to get your flag badges. In Wales, we're still fighting that fight. We still don't have our Welsh rainbow NHS badges because it is seen to be political. It's seen to be something that again, why would you single out one equality strand and badge that? Maybe for some of the right reasons. Why would you badge something and make it an issue? But at the same time, we know that our populations need that symbolism to be able to feel safe when they walk into health environments that are alien environments, that don't always feel as though they're embracing the whole person. So, you know, we're still fighting that battle in Wales, and I think it may well be a long battle before we get there.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, how you've covered your challenges and how you've become this inspirational role model who was nominated for this by many different avenues. Now, Nick, you've been sitting patiently waiting there. I want you to kind of cover A, the point you wanted to raise, B, the challenges that you faced, but also then how you've used them and then became this inspirational role model as well. So I want you to take us through that journey. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm pretty new to the NHS. I'm a physiotherapist, but only qualified just about 11 months ago after a career change, the ripe old age of 28. I started off in a completely different career, and I was never really particularly out. I never really had any reason to be. It was quite a solitary profession. But I knew coming into the NHS that it's a lot more teamwork. There's a lot more people. There's a lot more opportunities to conceal or to be authentic. And I made that conscious decision, much like Caroline, that going into this, I want to make sure that this is me, pardon the quote. But I did that, and I decided, okay, let's go in day one. And funny enough, from very, very start day one, I brought my lunchbox in, and someone said, oh, you've got your lunch pack there. And I just replied, oh, Jamie packs it for me. Jamie's my boyfriend. But the response was, oh, does she pack it every day? And it was the first micro pressure that I felt to disclose. And I thought, God, it's day one and I'm already here, you know. And funny enough, it just in conversations throughout that day, many more times it came. So having felt that on day one, I thought, I'm going to have to try and do something about this. So I looked through our organisation, and we have an equality and diversity, I suppose, representative on board, and people that work to enact all the policies. But at that time, we didn't really have much in terms of staff networks or support. So I approached our colleagues, and they had the ball rolling, so to say, but there wasn't really much uptake. Now, at this point, I was a brand new Band 5 physio. I didn't even know how to do most of the physio, never mind anything else in an organisation. But I thought, no one's really stepped up. Why not? It's a good opportunity to demonstrate a little bit of leadership, and it's something that I'm personally comfortable with. And having experienced already on day one what people must go through every day for the length of their careers, I thought I can maybe make a change with that. So we went about kind of setting up the staff networks and having conversations with people. And I found one of my biggest challenges as a brand new Band 5 is that nobody really wants to listen to you very much. And having sway at that point of your career is quite difficult, particularly when it's on something that's often seen as a higher level. You know, it's the Equality and Diversity Board. I didn't feel like it was quite reachable. But when I was quite surprised. I had some nice conversations with the team, and they were just really happy that there was someone wanting to do something. And it really kind of changed my mindset. I was like, okay, someone's listening, someone wants me to do this. And it just gave me that little bit of courage to think, right, it doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm sure of myself, I can do this. So we decided to make some visible role models, and myself and a couple of colleagues stood up for that. And I've since ended up becoming the chair of the Equality and Diversity Network. Don't ask me how that happened, but I'm still trying to figure all of this out. But yeah, we've got our first Zoom meeting tomorrow. Everything is moving along, and it's turned into something really positive. We've got lots of names and, you know, people stepping forward and becoming interested. And it's all come from just comms, from having, you know, a face to put the name to. And it's not just me, you know, it's a lot of my colleagues, and people willing to be visible, I think, makes it more accessible for people to become involved without having to be visible themselves. We have a lot of people that are interested in the networks that are maybe aren't as comfortable with their sexuality, but are really interested in understanding what's available in terms of just peer support or signposting to resources. Or if people, we've had a lot of allies come through in the network that are, you know, they've come across a particular case, they're unsure how to address it. Do you guys know the best way to deal with this? That's a question I often get. And it's nice to be just a point of reference that's accessible. And I think I'm happy I made the decision on day one to kind of deal with these pressures, because when you start to create a culture where people are a little bit more, I suppose anyone is comfortable to ask a question rather than make a presumption, that's where we start to make progress.
Well, I tell you what, Nick, if I was your boss, I'd be inviting you for a cup of tea every week. I'd have you in a rolling invite diary, I'm telling you. And look, absolute kudos to you. So I have got my first chair position of an LGBTQI+ network, and I'm 20 years qualified, and it's my first. So you are just achieving so many things at this stage of your career. So well done. And this is exactly why you're here as a role model. So thank you.
No worries.
Now, I want to pick up on the network thing, because it wasn't really something in the agenda, but that's really important. And depending on, so I work at the Royal Brompton in Harefield on Fulham Road in Chelsea. You literally couldn't get any posher. And then I've been there like 4 months. So, and they didn't have an LGBTQI network. And there was our chief pharmacist, Keith, who is very openly gay, had made the steps to set one up. And we are in an organisation like that, like I've just described. You know, everyone of any significance is white, heteronormative in terms of that positional power. And we had our first network meeting thinking that we might be inclusive rather than exclusive and be open to allies, but there is nowhere that the people who identify as LGBTQI+ in that organisation are ready to be openly having conversations. So I am just sharing my experience within my organisation at the moment and picking up from what other people have said. Now, networks, how can put all of those role models into one space? So how important are networks? And has someone got anything that they'd like to elaborate or share on that? Jade, and then anyone else that wants to come in.
Yeah, so where I work, so we don't have separate networks for specific groups, so we just have a general equality achievement network. So we kind of cover all topics. So LGBT, we did something for the Black Lives Matter. We're looking to do kind of other diversity events. So I think it's just trying to include, like you said, include everyone, bring everyone to the table, but then also respecting where that kind of intersectionality crosses over from all the different minority groups, whether it's obviously religious groups, ethnicities, LGBT+, gender. It's trying to, when you have one network, it's trying to juggle all of that. And I think sometimes it can be difficult, sometimes it's quite good because you get to challenge other people's perceptions on particular issues, which is quite good, and you get more of a broader conversation going. But then also it's quite interesting when people that might have been not as active in the group, and then when you, especially when I've been trying to raise particular LGBT issues, especially around non-binary staff, and then all of a sudden people that have never had an opinion all of a sudden come crawling out of the woodwork and have an opinion on things, and it's trying to juggle what they're saying as well as trying to get your own opinion across. And I think that's sometimes quite difficult, trying to appease everyone.
Absolutely. And I don't know if anyone was on the LGBTQ NHS England or NHS Employers event last Thursday, I think it was, but they talked about allies and how allies will often sit across all of the EDI networks or the diversity networks, and I'd just never considered that. And what was really powerful is our BAME network meeting, the two people, I suppose, within very senior management posts that were there, myself and Keith, and from the LGBTQI network. So I thought, oh, actually, this is a really powerful point. Caroline, coming down to you.
Yeah, I think historically we, in my employer's organisation, have had an equalities committee that fed into the board with the various strands as separate groups, and facing sort of similar challenges to what yourself, Rachel, and Jade have gone through there in terms of that intersectionality, really. And I think we're getting more and more attention and understanding of what that intersectionality brings to the conversation. So, you know, recognizing that we're not just our sexual identity, and the power in talking about our whole selves. And I think that has a lot of lessons to take to our LGBTQ colleagues who are considering coming out but don't want to be seen as the gay one. So when we are sharing our entire selves, not just our gayness, that hopefully gives confidence to those who are kind of sitting on the fence a little and thinking, I can't just be that person. I can't be that gay in my department. They have to see me as the whole. So if we think about our intersectionality, I think maybe that adds some value to our thinking around networks. And interestingly, we don't call ours networks because that was deemed to be too social. So we have an advisory board for LGBT. Originally LGB, we more latterly added T, and then we became a virtual group because nobody had any time to meet anymore. But actually being virtual has helped us a lot to be able to move forward with some of our actions. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. It's the advisory board is a really interesting discussion because it's like who you're advising. It's almost like you're there because you're providing solutions to the problems that you've created. But I get it's like, I think it's whatever fits within that organisation, isn't it? And actually the people who co-create that space are the people that belong to it. And it's that co-production that's important, and that makes it powerful and meaningful. And again, just picking up on something else you said, you know, in terms of how you identify is part of who you are, but it doesn't define you. And that is in terms of people either coming out or, you know, sharing what can be very personal, can be very traumatic, can be very powerful, uplifting experiences for people is a really personal thing. So on that note, I'm going to come around to every single person, so be prepared. And I'm going to ask you about why you are on this podcast and what makes you the inspirational role model that you are. So this is a bit cringe for people, but I really want people to be brave and tell everyone. And for some of you, it might be that you've seen things in other people that you wanted to be. For some people, it's because of the experiences you've been through. But this is when you're going to inspire the next generation. So Amy, I'm coming the other way around. I'm coming to you first.
Okay. So I mean, again, as a few people have said, the role model is a heavy burden term, but actually when you start to think about what you've done and what you've achieved and kind of what you do in everyday life, actually kind of I get that to an extent, and it's about visibility. I mean, am I a role model because when my physio students like have started with me in the past, I'll make a point to tell them within the first week my whole family history and my queer little family unit that we've got? Possibly, because hopefully then it's inspiring some of those physio students to go forth and feel accepted and welcome in the world going forward. Am I a role model because I helped with the network when we did a gender transition at work policy? Yeah, I'd say so. Maybe I've taken my own life experiences and turned that into editing a policy so it works for the people it's meant to work for, not just the organisation. And I think it's just little bits like that, isn't it, that we might do that we don't really think of too much at the time, and it might not feel like a big thing, but it's the little things that add up. And actually, I just going back to the visibility point, I think recently, over the last couple of years, Twitter has been massive for me. And I think seeing so many people doing amazing things and hearing all about their journeys through Twitter really kind of helps to give you some people to look up to and just share in your greatness and what little bits you do in a day-to-day life. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, the power of social media. Steph, coming to you next.
One rule, always make sure you take yourself off mute. Okay, so role model, I don't think anybody generally starts off to say this is what I'm going to be, is what you involve. It's as most people said, it's how your actions, how people see you. And then without realising it, slowly, as more people come to you and everything, and you suddenly realise that a lot more people are taking heed of what you're saying and your actions have results. And then it's almost like the unstoppable stone, isn't it? That kind of gathers up and everything. And before you know it, people turn and say, well, I see you as a role model. I never see myself as a role model, if I'm honest. I'm up front and everything up there. And it was quite a surprise, Rachel, when you kind of popped this kind of question to me and said, oh, you've been nominated an inspirational role model. I thought, where did that come from? Because I do not see that in any which way. But I'm definitely glad. I'm glad that people maybe see me for that. And maybe my journey and my story comes out and can inspire other people. And that's the best I can hope for. I've used my experience and obviously the journey within the ambulance service to make something more meaningful. And for those people, I think the story from everybody is that we want to kind of set almost like a legacy, that the people who follow on behind us don't suffer the same issues that we all suffered when we started out our journey.
Thank you so much. And that's exactly the reason why you are here, and you were highly recommended. So thanks, Steph. Holly, coming down to you.
I don't know why, but I think probably because I am now out and a massive lesbian at work, and I'm comfortable with it and I'm happy to do it. And I think people find that, you can be happy and you can be gay and you can go to work and you can manage. I think people find that, I don't know, they're like, oh, well, maybe I could be like that. Maybe I'm struggling with my sexuality, but actually it might get better. And, I've had a colleague of mine at work who's one of the managers, who's come to me with a colleague with a junior member of staff that was struggling, to come in and have advice about it. And I think I have that quite a lot. I think people just come to my door and come and chat to me because they feel like they can come and approach me and ask me questions. And a lot of it is about diversity. And I think even, my managers will come to me and say, oh, I don't understand this. Can I ask you that? And I think it's because I'm happy to say, oh, I don't know that, or I know a lot about being gay. So maybe it's that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you'll probably hate us for saying this, but somebody actually reached out and disclosed their full journey to me about how Holly changed their lives at work. Someone who was incredibly shy, who had bad experiences about being outed, and was just so nervous and terrified. And she found out Holly was a proud gay woman who was also married. And she just took huge inspiration of that. So I think it's the power of having those visible role models. And, she was very happy that I shared that. So well done, Holly. And thank you for sharing. Sean, coming to you.
Hi, well, I suppose the thing I'm really proud of is I found out from a talk by the LGBT Foundation that there was huge waiting lists for trans and non-binary people for speech and language therapy. So I set up a voluntary service and I got my students involved. And I remember one of my students saying, you're an openly gay lecturer telling us about how we're going to work with trans people to cut the waiting lists because it's really not on. And I said, yeah. And she said, you're doing this all in your own time. And I was like, well, yeah, because trans and non-binary people are really suffering the abuse that gay men got in the 80s, which is, the press paint them as demons, people want to have laws against your identity. That sounds all very familiar to me, and it makes me sick to my stomach. So I've now got all this knowledge, and knowledge is power. And the thing that really put the cherry on the cake, because I was nominated for several awards, one at the University of Staff Volunteer of the Year, which I won. And I was nominated by a student, a gay student, who obviously really kind of enjoyed working with trans people and really got a lot out of it. But the thing that really choked me up is, without bringing any confidence, is I treated this person as a child. That's how old I am, for speech problems. So I feel like I've gone the full circle there, that I've proven that I can work with children and they can become speech therapists and work with clients who need our expertise. So I suppose the thing I've always seen is I really think that whether you're a student, whether you're newly qualified, whatever, everyone's playing this game of going, am I supposed to be doing this? Are they going to let me get away with this? Am I going to be a speech therapist? And I've realised that you can get away with stuff because you're good at it and because you are good enough. And I think a lot of LGBTQ plus people, we feel because of the negativity, we're not good enough. My word, we're not good enough. We're much better than that. So that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. And you know, as well, Kim, highly recommended, but also by your CEO, who can't speak highly enough of you, Sean. So that's something in itself to be nominated by your CEO. Caroline, coming down to you.
Like many who've spoken before me, I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. I think going back to my earlier comments about, the integrity that I hope to live my life through is being open and honest and above all else visible. I might not always have anything to say about a matter, but just being there at the table is important, and adding value through ensuring that either myself or someone who can provide some representation is important. And I think I'm quite good at putting people together. So in terms of making the links, if I haven't got the answers myself, I usually know someone who has, and that's where I think that works really well. And I'm kind of passionate about leadership and being integrity, having the integrity to lead through the way that I want to lead, not modeling myself on someone who looks perfect at doing it, but just being open, honest, and doing the best that I can.
And you don't need to be shouty. You can do that in a really calm, quiet manner. I definitely sense that about you, Caroline, and think that's why you're here. It's that diversity of approach, isn't it? Nick.
Oh, sorry, I'm on a phone and it's just decided to tip over. Yeah, I think there's a lot of what people have said resonate there. I think for me, I just can't sit still when I can feel inequality, and it's probably just this annoyingly proactive brain just keeps saying, do something about that, do something about that, do something about that, and I can't quite get away from it. So I've got good at, I suppose, turning that into action. And I think I've done a little bit of a leadership program as a student, and one of the really good bits of advice was let what you feel passionate about lead you. And there wasn't much more that made me riled up than feeling discriminated against. And I kind of just learned to turn that table a little bit and try and be proactive about it. And my approach is just to be open, to be exactly who I am. And if people are questioning or confused, or if they're intrigued, if they want to know more about me, they can ask. I'm just being me, and I try to, I suppose, let that I don't know, I try and just be authentic, I guess, and then that rubs off on people, because when you're comfortable with yourself, people feel comfortable around you and feel like they can ask you questions, or I don't know, just be you. I think one of the big things I'd like to thank is the fact that we all overcome some kind of adversity. And I think that's part of being LGBT plus. It's having that common understanding that we've all been through something, are going through something, will go through something, and being there for other people in whatever context or requirements they have. That's probably what I do best, so hopefully I'll keep that going.
Definitely, and as I said before, if I was your manager, I'd have you on speed dial. So well done. Charli.
I'm about to take a drink then. I think, like a number of the others have said, it's kind of hard to, when someone's nominated you as an inspiration, it can be really personal, individual to them, so it's quite hard to put your finger on it yourself. But I suppose it's most likely because I am quite vocal about the journey that I've been on to get to where I am now. So there's been a lot of mental health struggles, particularly when I was in my early 20s, mid-20s. I'm 31 now and in a much better place, but I think I go and deliver talks in schools with the charity Diversity Role Models, and I feel so strongly about being the role model that I didn't have when I was younger. I would never want anyone to feel like I did. And so if I'm the one who stands on the soapbox and waves the flag and gets labelled as the gay one who's always like ringing the bell, telling everyone about it, correcting people, challenging things, then I'm okay with that if it makes a colleague or an athlete at whatever age that I work with feel better, or the wider community. And I just think it's so important. And yeah, basically I'm just gobby.
Love it. Thank you, Charli. And Jade, I'm going to come to you, and then if anyone else has any other comments, please let us know. Otherwise, Jade will be wrapping it up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of echoing what many of the others have said. Had you have asked me a week ago why I was being considered a role model, I would have said absolutely not. But I guess having thought about it, being kind of openly out, and I've never tried to hide it, trying to make it as kind of just normal everyday conversation, but then also I guess it's me wanting to improve things not only for myself but for others, and kind of actively advocating for the LGBT plus community and seeking out, whether it's, you know, networks at work or advocating on why we need to improve things for our patient care as well. And I've always been told that I have a kind of calm persona when having to deal with difficult and challenging conversations, and I love having those conversations because I use their opportunities to educate, and to use those moments as kind of challenging people's perceptions, and whether it's prejudice and discrimination, and kind of making people aware of what they're saying or what they're doing actually is having an impact on another person, and wanting to kind of just continuously improve on our working environments and making them as inclusive as we possibly can, until we get to a point where we don't have to have these conversations and we don't have to continuously come out, you know, whether it's every single day or there's always going to be moments where we're having to come out to people. And, you know, I'm very fortunate at the moment being in a team and an organisation where, you know, I can talk about me and my partner and it's not even, you know, a conversation. It's just that's my personal life and that's who I am. And I think it's pushing for that type of progress and being able to just be like, this is me, you know, it's just another part of who I am, and it's, you know, doesn't become that kind of challenging conversation. I think that's trying to get to that point will be the push of things.
Absolutely. And if there's no more comments, I think I'm going to finish on Steph's comment, which was being a role model for LGBTQI plus AHPs is about making it easier for those that follow in our paths. So on that note, I just want to thank the panel. You're going to be seeing so much more of them in the LGBTQI plus whole series we've got planned. So watch this space, and thank you so much.